Break a leg, buddy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Boozy's Legal Funhouse. I am your host, the Boozy Badger, and with me, as always, is our certified legal layman, Alkali. Say hi, Alkali.
I'm a ferret.
That's not the word hi. That is
Oh, hello.
you keep every fucking time, every time.
Gotta change it. Gotta
Every,
change it every time.
So, unlike the last 5 episodes, this one is not recorded live in front of a live audience at a furry convention in a hotel somewhere outside of a major city that we never actually see the interior of the city. This one is recorded live back on Twitch because for once, for the first time since fucking January, both Alkali and I are home at the same time to sit down and do this.
Excuse me, I'm sitting on the Chicago skyline right now, wading a little bit inside of a beautiful river that drops off immediately off of the sidewalk. Don't ask how I know this. I'm clumsy.
Oh, it has been a wonderful set of months here. We've actually stuck with our promise to get you at least one episode every month from January, and that's because we've been in the same room with each other, able to record these live. Once our con season actually slows down a bit, which is going to happen somewhere around July, we're going to look at getting back onto the twice-a-month schedule, as always, and we're going to keep promising each other we're going to record one in the hole so that we don't have to worry about being behind on updates, but we won't do it. We just, long fucking experience, not going to happen. We're going to get together, say we're going to do it, and then get drunk.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Usually immediately. I don't think you were ready to see me step out of the CRV with vodka and orange juice in hand.
I was not. That was a new one. I really wish you hadn't done it at the church parking lot.
Okay, look, they were sealed legally. I might be okay as a certified legal layman. I don't think there's anything they can do if both bottles are sealed. The orange juice I could have had open. I was being respectful.
Well, that actually is a wonderful lead into our disclaimer. Thank you for giving legal advice just immediately right off the bat.
You got it, buddy.
Boozy's Legal Funhouse is an educational, informational, and hopefully entertaining podcast about law and basic legal principles. I am a lawyer. I am not your lawyer. And what this is not is legal advice. The way I would become your attorney is if you came into my office, sat down, told me your problem, I said I can help with that, gave you an engagement letter which you then signed and paid me a retainer of my choosing. You don't just get to PayPal me $1 and say I'm your lawyer. That's not how it fucking works. If you do all of those things, then I would be your attorney. But you can't do any of those things because I'm not in private practice and I don't represent private clients anymore. So what you need to do if you have a need for legal advice is find an attorney who is licensed in your jurisdiction and talk to them. The law is a tricky bitch, and that means it differs a little bit from state to state, and you're always gonna need an attorney in your jurisdiction to interpret any of the principles that we may or may not talk about on this show. Please, for the love of God, whatever you do, do not go to court and tell the judge a fat man who acts like a cartoon badger on the internet told you this. It will not go well for you. And now it's time for Alkali's legal disclaimer. Alkali's not a lawyer. Please.
I play one on the internet.
Please stop asking Alkali for legal advice.
I'll answer.
Just stop. It's not going to be right. It's not going to be right. I've told this story, and the long-time listeners, the people who listen to every episode, thank you so much. But you're about to hear this again because I tell this joke at every live recording with an audience because it's wonderful. Alkali is at a gay campground, sitting around the campfire, when a twink says, "Oh, wait a second. He's on the legal podcast. We should ask him." Alkali calls me to tell me this, and my response is, well, they obviously do not listen to the legal podcast or they would know what your role on the show is.
They skip to the good part. They get to the legal news. That's what they're doing, obviously.
We got one thing we have to do before the legal news, and something I didn't get to do with our last episode when we talked about the cow of contracts, Rose of Aberlone II, and that
That
is
was a good one.
read off the name of the Patreon supporters of the show over at patreon.com/lawyersandliquor at the $5 level and above. So a special thank you to Ash DeRoche, Jack of all Corgs, Tezcat Magic, Jag, Dozer, Trash Panda, Mama T, Uncle Kage, David Hunter, Evelyn Klein, Lufus the Raccoon, Netherlinks, Pandemonium, Terra the Flame Vixen, Aaron Williams, Aethys, Alex Lee Wolf, Alkali Anonymous, Amethyst, Andy, Beaton, Buddy Goodboy, CC Otter, Chroma Hydra, Dragor, The Weather Fox, Emily Whitebrood, Floofy Foxers, Ghost Goat, Grace Jane Gollinger, Head Fox and Jason Knight, Julie Esslinger, Jess James, Kiva, Coda Masters, Lack, Leon Dashwood, Lorraine Poirier, Mark Whipple, Michael Blocker, Nikolai Nightstar, Autopoom, Pretchoff Neutrino, Red Fox, Road of the Snow Leopard, Rune Dog, Scaly, Scuba Fox, Serathan, Silver. On to page 2. There's 2 pages of you assholes now. Sir Bright Scales, Skyer, Tiny Voices, Tyron, Ziggy Bull, and Zigzy Fox. Thank you so much for your support of the show, and of me, and of Alkali, and of everybody on there. If you want to be one of those wonderful people, you can do that over at patreon.com/lawyersandliquor, where you'll get early access to the episodes about a week before they go live. You'll get access to the archived recording of the live episodes when we have our cameras on, and maybe a few little things that I'm working on once a week when we don't have an episode going on those off weeks. For just the Patreon supporters. Check it out. Whew. That was a
Well
long
done.
one. Yeah, that was a
Yeah, it
long
was.
one. Like,
Well done.
I fucking memorized that. I'm proud of myself.
There you go.
Like the people listening at home are like, holy shit, he got through it without flubbing a line for once.
The more you read your Patreon list, the more weird it becomes when someone new joins. Like my flow.
Well, it's a good thing that I got through
It's
it
a
without
very good thing.
without flubbing this time. It's a good thing because we have for the people who are new to the show, who have never tuned in before, who have never heard it. I want to tell you what rule number 1 of Boozy's Legal Funhouse is. We record this live. It is recorded live, either with the 2 of us in the same room, or the 2 of us in front of an audience, or the 2 of us like we are tonight over on one of our Twitch channels and recording it for our followers to watch at the same time. And while we have audio editing software, I can't be fucked to figure it out. I hate editing. I will not dedicate a single moment of time to figuring out how to fucking master an audio recording. And I definitely am not going to figure out how to cut and splice different parts of the audio recording to make them sound seamless. I'm a lawyer, not an audio engineer, so no second takes. None. No second. If we fuck up, it stays in. And if we fuck up bad enough, you will never hear this episode. we just will not release it.
God, if we fuck up, it stays in. That's the name of your sex tape.
That's that. You know what? If we fuck up, it stays in. Put it on my tombstone.
There you go.
If we fucked up, he's still staying here. We're not getting
The
him back
leg
out.
is just sticking out of the ground. Like, look.
No second digs. None.
No, you can't do that.
Well,
we don't have any BBs. If you had BBs, then call back. How many episodes ago was that? See, I remember.
Oh
shit.
yeah, no, that where they. Jesus, you did remember that. That's the one where they threw BBs into the crypt and it ate through the casket.
Ate through the I thought that was the coolest shit. Also, I bring BBs to graveyards now.
Oh my God, don't do that. It's really simple not to do that.
What? Where do you think I walk? I've got the graveyard right down the street from me. We've got beautiful graveyard coyotes that live there. We are friends now because they are really bad at locking the back gate on the west side.
So I just want to be clear. This is for folks that we need to do legal news. And yes, we're going to get into tonight's cases. But the first part of this show is really just me and my friend fucking with each other.
Yeah.
You live near Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, don't you?
I live very close to Bachelor's Grove. In fact, I just went out hiking there 2 days ago.
Yeah, I want to make sure because we were watching a movie the other week called Lisa Frankenstein.
Interesting. Okay, love the title.
And the plot of Lisa Frankenstein is essentially it's Frankenstein. It's like Frankenstein in the 80s, except a high school girl falls in love with the idea of a dead guy that whose bust is on the tombstone in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery that she goes to, and it's obviously not based in Chicago, but it's based in like fictional Chicago. Like they never say the name of the town, but they're referencing like Chicago shit. They're like Brenham Park, and I'm like, oh, Brenham Park, the Brenham Farm was like where the real Bachelor's Grove Cemetery was when it was founded. I'm like, okay, so like this is somebody who's familiar with the Chicagoland area.
Yeah.
Trying to avoid setting this in Chicago while setting it in Chicago.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Yeah.
Bachelor's Grove is neat, man. It's kind of a beautiful little area. There's a reason why people say Bachelor's Grove is one of the most haunted cemeteries, and that reason is absolutely you shouldn't build a cemetery up against a major swamp. You walk into this place and there's these beautiful, like people obviously still go here. It's still in use. There's still little trinkets on the gravestones, but you walk to the back of the cemetery and it backs up against a disgusting, putrid, bug-infested swamp, a tree line, and then the road. And that's the only reason you can't see the cemetery from the street. It is a very eerie place at night. I truly appreciate it.
Well, I love hearing you say that it's a very haunted cemetery because this is the last promo, and then I swear to God we're going to do the legal news. I promise you, this is like
you and I are having a conversation. We will get nowhere so fast.
At 8:00. Shit, we didn't get to the case. Shit
God,
happened.
Still have to run
Bye. I'm glad you mentioned a haunted cemetery because our next live show is actually, I sure as fuck hope, going to be at Anthro, Ohio on Memorial Day weekend. Now, I say I sure as fuck hope because I haven't actually seen the schedule for Anthro, Ohio. I submitted it.
Yeah,
I'm assuming we're on there. but I haven't heard for sure. And if not, we'll make it on there. We'll yeah.
They'll do it in a hallway.
Yeah, we'll find a place and sit down.
It's not the first time we performed in a hallway.
No,
also
it's not.
The name of your sex tape.
Oh my God. So it's now time for what Alkali said is everybody's favorite part of the show, the legal news.
AI news. AI news.
It's not. We're not going to go to AI news. We're not.
Of course we are. It's always interesting.
I can't go to AI news. I will, however, go to tech news.
Oh, okay.
Technology plays a role. So we're going down to Texas in the legal news today.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna go all the way down to Texas, more specifically Dallas County, Texas. And if you heard that beep, sorry, my computer just decides to start notifying me. And you know, I said if you fuck up, it stays in. Stays in. Stays in. So we're going down to Dallas, Texas today, Dallas County, Texas, and we're going into the courtroom of Judge Nancy Mulder.
Okay.
So Judge Nancy Mulder, she's a Democrat in Texas. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. She's been on the bench for a while. And she's decently respected jurist. Like she's actually running to be elected to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which is Texas's court that handles criminal appeals. The name is exceedingly self-explanatory on that one.
Yeah, you know what? I've learned a lot from you. Yeah, I don't pay any attention to the names. Most of the time they are not self-explanatory, and half the time they're in fucking Latin.
Yeah, well, welcome to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. What type of cases do you handle? Adoptions. So Judge Mulder is sitting. She has a jury trial going on. It's a trial for murder, actually.
Okay.
It's a trial for the murder of Jorge Esparza. Um, Jorge Esparza is on the trial for the murder of Ricardo Medina Madriz in 2020. All right.
Okay.
So Ricardo goes on a date with a woman back in 2020. It's the first date. They go out. They have a little meal. They watch a movie. They have a great time. Ricardo walks her home or drives her home, leaves her house, and gets in his car. And what do you think happens?
Well, he's in Texas, so the power goes out because for some reason they want their own grid.
No, Esparza basically comes out of a bush and kills him.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what I'm more shocked about, whether there was a murder in Texas or that Texas has bushes. I
Like
thought it was just cactus.
I'm amazed you're shocked at all because I opened with she was sitting on a murder trial.
Fair enough, yeah.
I didn't hide the fucking ball there, buddy.
I don't pay attention to your words until they're in Latin. Those are the only time they mean what they mean, and I own Google.
So Esparza, what they think is going on, what they think happened, is that Esparza was stalking uh, Madriz's date, and when Ricardo went out on the date, Esparza lied in wait, waited for the date to end, and then killed Ricardo. You know, kind of a jealousy sort of thing, right?
Okay.
Um, so they're sitting there, and this judge, Judge Mulder, is known for live streaming her trials. Like that's
Okay.
so. So she starts live streaming her trials, and in the middle of this trial, Esparza starts to have a panic attack. Right.
Oh shit.
So he's panicking, and when he's panicking, the judge, Judge Mulder, goes, "Okay, we're gonna clear the courtroom. You know, we're gonna clear the courtroom. Mr. Esparza obviously needs some type of assistance. The jurors leave the courtroom. The lawyers leave the courtroom. Mulder is sitting in the courtroom. There's somebody, a member of court staff, in the courtroom with her, and the member of court
Oh,
staff."
the bailiff, right?
Yeah, like well, just members of court staff. There's more court
Okay.
staff. Like there's a clerk, there's a secretary, there's a bailiff. There's more court staff than just the bailiff. It's not fucking night court, man. Yeah,
Everything is night court.
yeah. It's not night court. It's not fucking Harry Anderson, Bull,
Uh,
and
excuse
the
me,
stenographer. And even in night,
Judge Harry Stone,
yeah,
Harry
they,
Anderson. Also the name of your sex tape. We're going to go to that joke a lot.
and even in
That's
night,
going to be my joke for the day.
even in night court, he had a clerk, the guy with the fucking loud sweaters.
Oh, Sam.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a clerk in night court. He's in every episode.
They
It's like,
didn't have a stenographer, though.
yeah, they did.
Did they? All right, I
Yeah,
just
right
don't
in the
remember
front. She was a bit character, like she wasn't one of the main characters, but no, they had one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, fine.
So they're sitting there right after they clear the courtroom. A member of court staff looks at Mulder and says, maybe he should go on suicide watch. Right? So
Okay.
the judge responds, no, no, he shouldn't. I think he's upset because he got caught. And she follows up with, I think he's crying for himself because he knows he's going to prison for a long time. So this unidentified member of court staff responds, well, he committed a murder for no reason, and Judge Mulder says it wasn't for no reason. He wanted to show he wanted to show her he's a man. Then follows up with, I'm frustrated because the lawyers aren't really following the proper procedure for admitting evidence, and I quote, we all know he's going to get convicted and get a bunch of time, but that doesn't mean you can just phone it in. You've got to follow the steps. What do you think the last words of this report were that she said?
The defendant immediately filed for a mistrial
Well,
due to improper representation.
Defendant's not in the room, lawyers aren't in the room, jury's not in the room. It's just her and her court staff. What do you think the last words that they can report are?
Don't report any of this.
Oh shit, I'm still streaming.
I forgot. Oh, no.
I know it's good when we peek out your fucking mic.
I know. I can't believe I forgot you said that right at the beginning.
She had been
That's
live.
amazing.
She had been live streaming the entire conversation.
Oh,
Uh,
that's fucked.
so she comes back in, and then she says, first of all, I'm recusing myself. Yeah,
Ah,
I'm not going to sit over any of his stuff. Secondly, I'm going to declare a mistrial. He gets a new trial. Third,
oh my God.
Third, she says, I deeply regret the comments I made during what I believe was a private conversation with court staff in an empty courtroom. I, just to be.
People, it's an opinion. They didn't know they were being. Dude, I don't know if you were there that day. One of the saddest things all my viewers had ever seen was because I left my camera on.
But you know what's funny?
What?
Remember what she said about the defendant, right? Like he's
What's that?
panicking and they're like, oh, he should be on suicide watch, and she's like, no, he's panicking because he's going to jail and he's just sorry he got caught. That's
Yeah.
that's why he's upset. He's just sorry he got caught. Then she says,
Innocent until proven guilty.
then right after that, when she's caught, going, he's guilty of sin, he's just sorry he got caught. She has to come out and say, I'm deeply sorry that people
I,
overheard this private conversation. It was inappropriate. She's not sorry that she
how
said it.
great would it have been if she walks out there? I'm so sorry I got
Yeah,
caught. And
yeah,
then just,
she's sorry she got caught saying those things. She's not sorry she said them. Just
oh my God. Oh my God.
and that, by the way, that is why anytime I stream, because I do stream. If you listen at home, I stream games. Alkali streams as well, and at the end, he'll tell you where to find that. But that's why every fucking time I sit here and I wait for everything to go green, and I keep the mic off, and I close the streaming encoder and everything else before I say a single fucking word.
That's where I'm at now too.
So, what happened?
Were
What
you
happened?
around?
No, I was not. What happened?
I ended the stream. It was a rough one. We had an incident on it. Somebody in the audience who was not part of the normal group that wanted to cause problems. You know what that does.
Yeah.
That affects streamers. That bothers us. So I shut down the stream. Forgot to actually shut down the camera and the live feed. Sat down in this chair without the green screen, showing my nearly empty garage. Sitting here very quietly and very subtly sobbing while cleaning a vacuum cleaner with a screwdriver. Getting frustrated, stabbing the hose, and looking up to see the red light on the camera.
How many subscribers did you get?
Lost one, gained a handful?
Alkali's vacuum murder stream. I love it. Oh,
Hey, the hose was already destroyed. I was just making a bigger hole so I could tape it better. That's logical.
but it's actually kind of amusing and appropriate that we're talking about frustration and murder.
Oh, always.
Yeah, because tonight's cases have to do with both, really.
Oh,
Like,
frustrating murder.
it is a discussion of something called the defense of necessity.
Okay.
Okay, do you know what the defense of necessity is? Tell me, tell
I'm
me,
going to
Alkali,
guess
what the defense of necessity is.
the defense of necessity. It is defending a client saying that they broke the law because there was no other choice.
That's exactly what it is.
That's
That's
okay.
that's
She wasn't even in Latin. I got it
exactly
this
what it is.
time.
However, there's conditions on when you can use it, and what are some of the conditions?
It has to be true. It had to actually be the only scenario that worked.
Is that really the truth? Like, does it have to be true?
I mean, or else it's going to fail in court and you're going to jail, so probably.
Well, why would it fail in court? Because we talked a while back about actus reus and mens rea. Do you remember that?
No, remind me.
It's the two parts of a criminal act. Actus reus is the criminal act, the
Okay,
action you have taken that is criminal in and of itself. The mens rea is the criminal mind, the state of mind for the crime. That's where you get things like malice aforethought, what they call murder fuck, I'm forgetting the word. You know what I'm talking about.
premeditated.
Premeditated murder.
Premeditated murder.
The
Okay.
legal term for premeditation is malice aforethought. You
Okay.
decided in advance to do something. So premeditated is just intent with malice aforethought. There's different levels of intent. There's specific intent. I intend it for that thing to happen. The thing that happened. General intent. I intend it to commit the act, but not the result. I intended to break into the house. I didn't intend to burn it down.
Okay.
There's reckless, there's willful endangerment. There's a lot of different levels of intent. But me telling you right now that a criminal act requires both. In many cases, there's some offenses out there. They're called summary offenses, where like you don't have to have intent; you just have to commit the act. Those are like traffic offenses most of the time. Okay,
Okay.
but me telling you that generally, a crime requires both actus reus, the criminal act, and mens rea, the criminal state of mind.
Okay.
Does does it have to be true that you will suffer some injury if you don't commit another offense in the defense of necessity? Like, does the defense?
Okay. No, you had to truly
There
believe.
you go, right off the
Okay,
bat.
you had to truly believe that this was your only course of action.
And it's the defendant must reasonably believe that there was an actual and specific threat that required immediate action. So you remember a little while back we talked about the abortion laws and how you had to drill it down when you're interpreting statutes and all of that. And one of the doctor's defenses was, well, yeah, but really having kids in this economic level is going to
Yes.
threaten the life.
Okay, now that I remember and I agree with.
Isn't that more of a general threat? Even if it's an actual threat, isn't that more of a general threat?
Okay, so it
Yeah,
has to be a specific
specific threat.
actual.
It has to be something that's going to happen, or that you believe
Okay,
is actually
all
going
right,
to
so hold
happen
on.
if you don't
And if
act.
this steps on your toe for the later in the show, then just tell me, we'll cover it later. Stealing a loaf of bread to literally survive. You are starving, you steal a loaf of bread, you get caught. Can I use this defense?
Well, there you go, Jean Valjean.
Ah, you shit. You shit.
I mean,
But it makes sense to me, and I'm a
that's
legal layman,
that's
which
probably
stands in court.
probably not because there is a second factor.
You and your factors.
The second element, and remember, all of these elements have to be met for you to use
Okay.
the defense of necessity in a criminal case. Okay.
All of them. Okay. All right.
Like you can't just get 3 out of 4. It's not every
Okay.
single one of these elements has to be met. So, defendant must reasonably believe that there was an actual and specific threat that required immediate action. I act now to avoid this specific thing that is going to harm me, or that I believe is going to harm me. Okay,
Okay.
I have to do it right now. So, let me ask: are you going to starve in the next 5 minutes if you don't steal that loaf of bread? Are you going to drop
Maybe.
dead of starvation? By the time you're at that point, aren't you already so far gone the loaf of bread's not going to save your life?
Look, as a fat man, I don't know how starvation works.
So like you could argue that immediate action would bar that. But really immediate action would allow you to just steal it sooner, wouldn't it? Because if you're not stealing it sooner, then you're going to get to that point where you're going to die. It's a real and specific threat that's immediately going to happen. You're going to cross that threshold for being able to be saved. So, could stealing the loaf of bread be justified even under immediate action?
I still think yes.
And does any of that fucking matter?
No.
No, because there's the second factor is you.
If the second factor mentions bread,
Yeah, God, I wish. You can't have any other choice. You
Oh,
must.
because I could have stolen the bread from across the
You,
street. Okay.
you must not have any realistic alternative to
Okay.
committing the criminal act. It must be really the only realistic choice that is open to you. And in that situation of stealing a loaf of bread to prevent starvation or to prevent yourself being imprisoned by a doggedly determined lawman who then follows you when you break patrol and adopt an orphan child from some innkeepers, and you become involved in an uprising in Paris, you fucking asshole. Um, you know, is there really a realistic alternative? Yeah, there's probably a lot of realistic alternatives. None of them are great. Like none of them are really nice alternatives.
Not
But
really. Cannibalism.
yeah, you could beg. You could, find some small job. You could scrounge in the wilderness. But there are realistic alternatives to avoid that stealing thing.
Okay. All
Okay,
right. I'm following so far.
and
I just
there's
wanted some bread.
there's two more factors.
Okay.
Two more factors. What do you think one of them is?
Well, you covered the two that I would have thought. Okay. You could not have put yourself in the scenario.
That's yep. The defendant himself cannot contribute to or cause the threat to exist. That is
Okay. All
that is
right. That
one.
makes sense.
And what's the
Okay.
last one?
Oh, now I'm running low on ideas. It's you can't do it in Texas because they have their own laws.
No, it's okay. You'll just get a mistrial after the judge forgets they're streaming.
Oh, good.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Because we've gone with actual and specific threat that required immediate action.
Right.
We've gone with you can't have a realistic alternative. We've gone with you
Right.
can't contribute or cause the threat. Say you're coming over to me, okay? Out of nowhere,
Okay.
I'm doing nothing. You're coming over to me, and you rear back. You're going to slap me. All right,
Okay.
and I pull out a saber and cut your hand off.
Okay. It has to be. You can't go above and beyond. I don't know how to say this.
The
It can't be
criminal act
excessive
the
force.
criminal act
Okay.
cannot be greater than the harm that is meant to be avoided.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and you hit it right there. Excessive force. That's actually when you it goes to self defense
Right.
with that. But
That's what I'm assuming this is mainly used for.
self defense is probably well, yes and no. The classic example of it, okay,
Okay.
is a guy has to drive away from a wildfire, but he's drunk.
Interesting.
Yeah, say there's a forest fire, somebody's in the woods, they've been drinking, the fire is starting to surround them, they're going to burn to death, or they're going to be harmed if they don't leave. They're drunk, they get behind the wheel of the car and they drive it off. Now, they have committed a criminal offense. They
Yep.
have driven drunk. But they have driven drunk because there was no reasonable alternative for them to get away from the wildfire quickly enough to preserve their life.
Okay.
Okay?
I mean, they could have built a fort out of the bread that they had stolen. That just toasts
Now,
nightly.
now there's another thing here, though.
I
And
thought we already covered all the
it's not
things.
one of the four elements, but it's something that negates the defense completely if they show it. Because the way it works,
Okay.
necessity is what we call an affirmative defense. All right. In every criminal case, the burden is on the prosecution to prove your evidence beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay.
An affirmative defense is what?
Affirmative defense, where
Yeah.
you admit to the crime, but that you don't want to.
Nope. I mean,
No? Okay, then what?
yes and no.
Oh.
It's yes, but.
Yes, but okay, yeah, that's kind of what I'm
Okay.
going for. You did what they are accusing you of, but not you're not guilty of the
For
crime
this
because
reason.
yeah.
Exactly. An affirmative defense can be what we call a complete defense. It can completely exonerate you from the crime, or it can be a mitigating defense. It can be something that lessens the harm committed and therefore the punishment on it.
Okay.
But the key is with every affirmative defense, the defendant actually bears the burden of proving that. They bear the burden of proving the affirmative defense.
Oh,
Okay?
it goes over to the defendant.
Yeah, it's what we call a burden shift. All right. In every case, the
I
prosec
didn't know that could happen.
the
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
in every case the prosecution has to prove that you committed this act.
Right.
You have to, and if they can, then you have to turn around and you have to show that there was an affirmative defense to it. If they establish all the elements of the criminal act, the mens rea, the actus reus, and you say, yes, I get it, you could convict me of that, but I'm not guilty because it was necessary. You now have to convince the jury of the necessity. All right.
Okay.
And at that point, the prosecution can negate your defense. They can argue to negate your defense.
Okay.
And how would they do that?
I'm going to guess by showing that the outcome, even though you could meet all four of those standards, was beneficial to you, that you actually wanted to hurt the person, to harm the person.
I mean, that kind of goes more to that last one. You can't create the threat because in most of those cases,
Yeah, okay.
like
Okay.
if you want to kill somebody and just giving them an excuse, that's
Okay.
like I
Yeah, no, you're
toss
right.
you the
You're
gun.
right. So that would be number 4. Okay, what do you got with
Our
it?
drunk driver from the wildfire. Say he's got to drive 5 miles to get out of the wildfire, right? All right.
Okay.
So he drives his 5 miles. 4 miles up the road from that five. The 5 miles is in the middle of nowhere, but it's the safe distance. Okay. 4 miles up the road is a gas station. He continues on. He's going to stop at the gas station. A mile away from the gas station, he slams into a minivan and kills a family of 5. Does the defense of necessity apply? Does it apply that he was only driving drunk? Because let's take the emotion. He doesn't kill a family of 5, but a mile away from the gas station, the cops stop him, and they find out he's driving drunk. They arrest him. Does the defense of necessity apply?
I'm going to say no, unless maybe I misunderstood part of the description. I thought he needed to get 5 miles away to survive.
Yeah. Now that 5 miles is in the middle of nowhere, but it's enough distance that he's away from the fire. He's not going to die from the
Okay,
fire.
I'm going to assume that this is a case using new technology. So is the answer it no longer applies because he could have stopped at the gas station and got a car?
Nope. It no
Why?
longer applies because he's out of the zone of danger. Once he hits that 5 mile mark and he's where he would be safe, he has
He
to
needs
stop
to
committing the
stop.
criminal act. Those
Okay.
extra 4 miles he drove were not necessary to avoid the harm. Therefore, they are not covered by the defense of necessity, and therefore, even though he began the criminal act out of necessity, he did not continue that act out of necessity, and he can be convicted.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Follow. All right.
So we got a firm
So
basis.
they would argue on him. They would argue he drove too far. He was out of danger earlier on. He should have stopped.
Exactly.
That's the argument. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Because there's no. All right. Okay. I'm following. Dear
It's
God.
and if you want to take it back to self-defense, when is the use of force justified? The use of force is justified to prevent the same or a greater harm to you, serious injury or death or serious bodily injury. And you can only use the force. You can only use the force if you're a Jedi. You can only use force.
I have a yellow saber.
But you can only use enough force as is necessary to stop the threat. And if you exceed that amount of force, now you've committed a assault-based or harm-based offense yourself because you've exceeded the amount of force you had to use to defend yourself.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's the same principle as that. When you said earlier, oh, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing, but necessity and self-defense are very similar concepts.
Okay.
Okay. There's an idea at law, and I've told you before, we got to go back when we look at American law to English common law. Okay.
Right.
And in English common
And
law,
English church law, don't forget, they sued a rat.
in English
Love
common law, necessity was a defense. It was a defense that they used, and it was very fact specific on when they used it. And there was one specific area that caused a lot of problems for the defense of necessity. And it was one that for over 100 years, by the time it was decided, well over 100 years of English judges had attempted to deal with this one issue and had never been able to deal with it.
What's that? Jedi?
No, no. Let me ask, what were the English known for in in the 19th and 18th centuries?
Oh my God. They were trying to figure out when their tea break was going to be.
The Navy, the English Navy,
The
right?
English Navy.
The English
Okay.
the
All
English
right.
were famous sailors. They had a strong maritime tradition. And
Okay.
sometimes at sea, shit happens.
In
And,
international waters, though, that doesn't count.
well, does that really apply? Here's a good question because it's got to come up later in the second case we talk about. Uh, how does international waters work? How does the law work at sea?
I believe whatever flag you are flying on your boat, your port
There you
of
go.
departure are the laws you must follow while at sea.
Whatever country your ship is registered with is the law that applies.
Okay, it's what you're registered with,
You're,
not the port that you leave.
well, it is and it isn't because typically, if you're registered with a country, you will have a home port in that country, even if you're never
Okay.
really there. Uh,
Okay.
but the law of that country will apply. That's actually a fun fact. There is a law in the United States called the Jones-Seaman Act, and the Jones-Seaman Act actually requires that if a United States ship is traveling between the U.S. and a foreign port, and then back to the U.S. Or ends anywhere other than the United States, it must be crewed solely by United States seamen, by citizens of the United States who are seamen, registered seamen with the U.S. Coast Guard. And that is insanely expensive. So
I
if
bet
so if you look at the major cruise lines, right?
they
eh,
are all out of. Yep.
They're all
Okay.
out
Now
of the
that.
U.S. and look at where they begin and end.
Yep. That's actually why I knew that law. Is because the last time my dad recently went on a cruise, he was very excited, and then he started telling me about news broadcasts. And I spent 4 hours at his house showing him what YouTube was so that he could be afraid of the cruise that he was excited to go on. I'm not a good son.
So our
Also,
first,
what was this law called? What did you say? It
the
was the what?
Jones-Seaman Act.
Okay, I thought you said that. I was really worried that werewolf piss was no longer their weirdest soda.
So we are going to go into the maritime tradition because the laws of the sea sometimes conflicted with the law period. The law of the sea being a concept of of general rules that mariners all followed. Didn't matter where you were. It was the law of the sea. Now the
Okay,
law of the land was a different thing. That was whether it had maritime law or not. It was more a series of accepted traditions, is what the law of the sea was. Okay,
okay,
and it's more of a cultural thing than a legal thing, is what I'm getting at. But they had always, because the law of the sea and the law of the land differed, English courts had spent a huge period of time wrestling with the problem of how to handle the defense of necessity at sea. And why would they have to handle the defense of necessity at sea?
because if you're in the middle of the sea and something happens, your choice is do everything you can to survive or die.
Exactly. And when you say do everything you can to survive, what do you mean?
Unfortunately, I'm going to go with pushing Rose off the damn door for trying to tell you that you couldn't both fit on it, Boozy. I've watched the movie multiple times. I can use the angle of the shadow. There is ways to know how big that floating piece of debris is. There are ways to know the buoyancy of that particular floating piece of debris. If she's not going to let you get on the raft, you push her off the raft.
So,
She
so
can draw fish.
yeah, part of it would be deciding who lives and who dies in like a shipwreck situation, then, right?
That was the short
Okay.
way of saying my insanity,
All right.
yes.
And the English, there's a very specific thing regarding that that we'll talk a little bit more about later, uh, that the English had been wrestling with for years. And when I say wrestling with it, I mean wrestling with it. There was a long history in English law going back to the 1700s where things happened at sea. People died as a result of the things happening at sea. And when the sailors would come into port, when they would get rescued from whatever happened, they would say it was necessary. We had to do that to survive. Okay?
Okay.
And since that had started happening, the English didn't know really how to deal with it. Typically, what would happen is they'd either report to the maritime agency, and the maritime agency would say, well, and they wouldn't try to hide it. These sailors would come ashore, they get rescued, they come ashore, and they go to like the governor general or something, and they would say, hey, we did X, Y, and Z to these people to live. And
Okay.
the governor general would do a couple things. One, they would say, okay, yeah, no, we get it. So we're not going to suggest you prosecute it. Or they would be prosecuted of the crime, they'd be convicted of the crime, and then they'd be almost immediately pardoned.
Really?
The idea on that, and one of the big examples is something called the St. Christopher case. All right. So in the St. Christopher case, a ship is blown out to sea from the Caribbean. It's lost for 17 days. Everybody on the ship is starving. They cast lots. They basically draw straws to determine who they are going to kill and eat. All right. One guy, one of the sailors, draws the one who actually said, "Hey, let's cast lots, kill one of us, and eat them, so the rest of us can live." Draws the short straw, and like somebody else is like, "I'll do it," and he's like, "No, no, no! I said I'd do it. So kill me and eat me," and they do, right? Uh,
Okay.
they actually, his body keeps them alive until they get to St. Martin Island, where they are then sent back to St. Christopher, where they immediately admit to what they did. They're put on trial for homicide. They are convicted. The judge immediately pardons them and says their crime was washed away by inevitable necessity.
Okay. So this law that we're talking about today goes all the way back to English tradition,
Yep, and
for English maritime tradition.
we had incidents of it in the United States as well. Yeah, have you read Moby Dick?
Yeah.
You fucking liar! Nobody's read Moby Dick. Um,
Absolutely. Dude, how else would I listen to The Mariner's Revenge? Also, we had to read it. I'm not going to claim I sit around reading classic literature. No, I went to a school that made us do bullshit.
Moby Dick was actually based on a real event to some extent. There was a whale ship called the Essex. The Essex went out and while they were stalking the whales through the whaling grounds, one whale attacked the ship and sank it.
Okay.
The ship sank. The surviving, this was in 1820, the surviving crew of the Essex takes to the longboats, the whaling boats, uh, as they are trying to make their way back to the islands that they last left from. Like they realize, hey, we're gonna die. We got no food. We're in the open ocean. So 6 of their crewmates had died of starvation, so they ate them. But there was one more named Owen Coffin. And Owen Coffin, after drawing lots, once again, he draws lots, uh, he gets the short straw. The captain immediately is like, "Oh, no, you can kill me. Don't kill Mr. Coffin. It's my crew. It's my responsibility." Coffin says, "No, it's the right thing to do so that the rest of you can live." They shoot Coffin. They eat Coffin. The Essex gets back to its home port, and nobody's ever prosecuted.
Holy shit.
Why weren't they prosecuted? The law of the sea. They
Ooh,
had to do it to survive.
that's some dark shit, man.
So jumping from then to 1841. Okay.
Okay.
It is 1841. It is Liverpool, England. Okay.
All right.
There is a ship called the William Brown. All right. Now
Okay.
the case for this one is from 1842. It's called United States v. Holmes. It takes place in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Back before we had a district court, we just had circuit courts and Supreme Court judges sat on the circuits and the whole thing. But the case was United States v. Holmes, and if you look it up right now, just to let you know, if you look up US v. Holmes, you are going to be just as fucking frustrated as I am because the Eastern District of Pennsylvania actually had another case called United States v. Holmes that was resolved like 2 years ago. And that's the one that pops up now because it's a reported opinion.
Of course.
And then you're going to be even more pissed because there was another case called United States v. Holmes from the Eastern District of Pennsylvania back in the 1820s that involved murder at sea. And you got to find out, but it's not this case. And you got to find out here in a moment why that is just so fucking infuriating to get halfway through reading that one and then realize you're reading the wrong goddamn case. Um, so the
That's funny.
so the William Brown leaves out for Liverpool. She's a cargo ship, but yeah, at that point in time, cargo ships weren't just cargo ships. They carried passengers a lot of the time. She's an American flag ship. The 13th of March, 1841, she's sailing to Philadelphia. On board, she has 17 crew and 65 passengers, most of whom are Scottish and Irish immigrants. All right. She is sailing across the North Atlantic. She's about 250 miles east of Newfoundland on the 19th of April, and she strikes an iceberg.
Ooh, all right.
Okay. Now, I know what you're thinking. April, iceberg, North Atlantic. Yeah. Yeah, that rose shit's coming back, ain't it, motherfucker?
Damn it.
And much like the Titanic, she did not have enough lifeboats on board
There we go. All right.
because the William Brown had no lifeboats.
None.
This was before lifeboats
Before.
were common at all.
Okay.
She had a longboat and she had a jolly boat. A jolly boat
The
being
hell is a jolly boat? Okay.
it's like a boat that takes people ashore. It's small. It's like a small boat to run people back and forth ashore.
Footed by Santa Claus.
Right. So the captain, the second mate, 7 crew members, and 1 passenger all get into the jolly boat. Right. The
Okay.
first mate, 8 crewmen, one of whom was actually a prisoner, would become a prisoner on this. So uh, the first mate, 8 crewmen, and 32 passengers, so about 41 people, get into the longboat. All right. Uh,
Okay.
the other 31 passengers, yeah, they're on the ship. Like, remember, there were 17 crew. All right. So we have the captain, the second mate, and 7 crewmen. So that's 9. And then another 9, 8 or 9 in the longboat. So every single member of the crew is in a lifeboat.
Okay.
All right. They're either in the jolly boat or they're in the longboat. All right.
All right.
They got 32 passengers, uh, but they had 65 passengers.
Right.
So what happens to the rest of the passengers? By the way, the math really doesn't fucking add up. Just to let you know, because it's like, oh yeah, there were 17 crew members and 65 passengers, but when you're like the captain, the second mate, and 7 crew members get into one boat, and then 9 members of the crew get in the other boat, and then there's 32 passengers in one in this boat, and 31 passengers there, and 1 passenger in the other boat. We're sort of missing a passenger. We don't know
Oh
where.
my
Like, a
God.
passenger's just fucking gone. A passenger's just gone.
Yeah, he just started swimming. I would have.
Okay. So the William Brown is starting to sink. There are 31 passengers on board, right?
Okay.
And the boats actually weren't like they thought they were in good shape. They thought the longboats were in good shape. Like the jolly boat's apparently in decent shape. They thought the longboat was in good shape, but once it gets in the water, she starts leaking.
Oh God.
Like she's taking on water. So the passengers and the crew, they're bailing the hell out of the longboat. They're all right.
Oh my
They're
God.
all right beside the William Brown as it's starting to go down. Like a plug comes out, like the plug that is supposed to keep water from coming into the boat,
Yeah.
keeps popping out, and they keep putting it back, and then they lose it.
Oh my God.
And the opinion on this just says its place was supplied by different expedients, meaning somebody just shoved some shit in the hole,
Oh my
right?
God.
So the boats are there from Monday night into Tuesday morning while the William Brown's going down. There's 31 passengers on the boat, and the passengers on the William Brown, still on the ship, are calling out to the longboat, and they're save us, please save us. And the mate, the first mate who is in charge of the longboat, cries out back to them, "You sorry souls, you're going down just shortly before we will."
Yeah, he's definitely a glass half empty kind of guy. All right.
I mean, like he's in a
Woo.
sinking boat, and they're like,
Yeah.
this isn't the 20th century where the guy dispatched like the Navy and the Coast Guard and helicopters and shit.
Yeah.
It is 1842 or 1841. You are in the middle of the North Atlantic. You don't even have a fucking telegraph on board. Your ship just
Yeah.
went down. Your captain is in a jolly boat with one passenger and a lot of the crew. You're the first mate in a leaking longboat with the rest of the goddamn passengers.
Oh my God.
Okay.
All right.
So the captain in the jolly boat and the longboat Tuesday morning, um, basically they go, well, we're gonna part ways. We're gonna have to change really how we're moving, because if we stay here, there's got to be issues, right? Your crew's going to cause problems. So the captain is going to take the jolly boat one way, and the longboat is going to be manned by the first mate and the other 8 crew members with the passengers while they try to find rescue the other way. And the captain, before disappearing, before the jolly boat takes off, essentially says, "Yeah, the first mate's in charge. Obey the first mate. He's in charge of that boat." But later, they would both testify that the gunnel, the side of the boat, was only like 5 inches to a foot out of the water at this time, and that they believed that the longboat was not going to be able to be saved, that it was going to sink, which is probably,
Okay.
probably why they left. Because if the longboat
Yeah.
sinks, there's like what 32 passengers and 9 crew. There's like 41 people on that boat, and they're all going to be coming for the jolly boat, which
Golly.
cannot
Yeah.
support them. Right? And the longboat's got like a bunch of food. They've got a bunch of supplies. They're pretty well set for that, but they're leaking.
Right.
Right? Um, and people are stripping down. They're taking off their clothes. They're crowded up. It's overloaded. If they move too far, it's got to capsize. If they hit anything, it's probably going to sink. Okay,
God. Okay.
so this goes on. The first mate's in charge of the boat. Uh, as the captain's getting ready to leave, he looks at the first mate, um, and the first mate basically tells the captain, "Hey, you need to take some of our passengers on board the jolly boat, because if you don't, we are going to sink unless we do some drastic shit." All right.
Okay.
The captain says to the first mate, "I know what you mean, and I know what you'll have to do. Don't speak of it now. Let
Oh
it
my God.
let it be the last resort."
Oh my God. Okay.
So the captain and his jolly boat have gone off. They're a distance away, so if the longboat goes down, it's not going to sink them. The longboat crew, is those 9 guys with the first mate. They're rowing the longboat like there's no hope they're gonna row 250 fucking miles to land.
Yeah, no shit.
But they're rowing the longboat. They managed to keep it going for 24 hours into Tuesday night, um, and then it starts raining.
Oh God.
So it starts raining. The wind begins to kick up. The sea's getting heavier, meaning the waves are getting
Yep.
bigger and they're splashing over the bow and it's soaking the passengers. And there's pieces of ice everywhere, and they're all sitting there. And somewhere around 10 o'clock that night, the first mate says to the crew, to the other 8 members of the crew, while they're frantically bailing it out and it's taking on water, "This work won't do. Help me, God, men go to work."
Oh God.
The crew doesn't move. The 8 members of the crew don't move at all.
Okay.
And then some of the passengers yell, "The boat is sinking. The plug's out. God have mercy on our souls." The crew still will not move until the mate says to them, "Men, you must go to work, or we shall all perish."
Oh fuck.
And what does the crew do?
They have to get rid of all the passengers to lighten the load.
They throw out 14 men and 2
Oh my
women,
God.
all of which passengers. The mate actually had ordered them, said, "Don't throw out any man who's with his wife, and don't throw any woman overboard." Obviously, they don't fucking listen because they threw 2 women overboard. Although there's actually some dispute about whether they threw the women overboard, because really what they say happened, what everybody kind of says happened, is the crew threw their brother overboard, and then the 2 women jumped in after him to try to save him because they were begging the crew not to throw him overboard.
Holy
Okay.
shit. Oh my God.
So among all of these crewmen is a crewman named Holmes. All right. And Holmes is right there. They go up to one passenger who's named Riley. They say, "Hey, stand up," and he does, and they chuck his ass overboard. They go to a guy named Duffy, and Duffy, who has just seen Riley get thrown into the North Atlantic to freeze and drown, starts begging, saying, "I have a wife and a child," but his wife and child aren't there. They're on the shore. They didn't come with him. So Duffy goes overboard. They grab another guy, and the other guy's wife starts screaming, and they're like, "Oh, okay, his wife's here." They let him live, right?
Oh my God.
So Holmes comes to this passenger that he's familiar with, that he knows. It's a guy named Charles Conlon. And the court record shows that Conlon looks at Holmes and says, "Holmes, dear, sure you won't put me out." At which point Holmes is reported to have said, "Yes, Charlie, you go too," and threw him the fuck overboard.
Holy shit.
So then Holmes.
This is fucked,
Oh no,
man.
no,
This
like
is
like
fucked.
we're going through as many of them as they fucking mention at this point. Holmes goes to another guy, Francis Askin, and he offers he offers Holmes 5 sovereigns to save his life until morning. Just don't throw me over until the morning. And Askin's whole idea: "I'll give you 5 sovereigns if you don't throw me over till morning, and if we don't have a rescue by morning, if God doesn't send us help by morning, we can draw lots, and if it falls on me, I'll go over like a man. Don't just throw me overboard. Wait, wait until the morning. And if we don't have rescue in the morning, let's draw lots." Remember, every other case we talked about, those 2 cases in the beginning, what did they do to decide who was going to die?
They drew
They
lots.
drew
They drew
lots.
straws.
It's
Yeah.
the chance. Okay, there's the chance. Holmes looks at him and says, "I don't want your money, Frank," and throws him in the ocean.
My God. Okay.
There is a guy named McAvoy, and he is seized, and he asks for 5 minutes to pray.
Oh, fuck off. Holy shit, man.
And the crew is getting ready to chuck him the fuck overboard until one crew member, the cook, stops them and says that before he's thrown overboard, they have to let him pray. And they do. And then he's thrown overboard. And we're going to come back to the cook a little later. So just remember, the cook's the guy who stepped in to make sure that Askin had time to make his soul right with the Lord before he went overboard. All right.
Holy fuck,
Our
man.
McAvoy.
All right, I'm following.
The next day,
Woo!
now, like when they throw Askin over, like Askin fights, but the ship doesn't go down. So now it's kind of like, was this really necessary? Because like somebody's struggling, the ship's not going overboard. What's going on? Right? The next morning, Wednesday morning, sun comes up. Uh, at which point the crew finds two men who had been hiding.
Hiding.
Like they had been hiding behind people or under a seat or something to keep from getting thrown overboard. Because they've basically thrown out all the men in the ship. Everybody
Holy
except the crew.
shit.
Every man except the crew's out. They find these two men the next morning. The ship's steadied. It made it through the night. The storm's done. They chuck their asses overboard.
Chuck them out.
Chuck
Yep,
them up.
okay.
Just let them drown. Right? So it's Wednesday morning. They throw them out. They have provisions for about 6-7 days. About 75 pounds of bread, some gallons of water, some pounds of meat, a bag of oatmeal. The mate has a chart. He's got a compass. He can chat. The weather's cold. Everybody's really numb. Wednesday morning, weather clears. Remember Wednesday morning, right after daylight, they chucked those two guys that they didn't need to throw out to drown. Right.
Right.
Weather clears Wednesday morning, and that's when they're rescued.
No.
They were rescued by a ship called the Crescent on Wednesday morning. Remember, the day before, the night before, when they're throwing everybody, Askin says, just wait until the
Wait
morning.
till morning. Oh
Wait
my
until
fuck.
tomorrow. And if we're not rescued, then we can draw lots. They are
Holy
rescued
shit.
Wednesday morning.
Holy fuck, dude.
The ship, the Crescent, gets into Philadelphia. The rest of the crew, remember, all the crew lives. The rest of the crew disappears. Like only the mate, only the second mate and the captain in the jolly boat are able to be found, and this guy named Holmes.
Oh my god.
So they charge Holmes with the manslaughter of Askin, the guy who had asked them to wait until morning.
Okay.
And they're really charging Holmes instead of charging anybody else because they can't find the mate and they can't find any of the other crew members.
They can't find the mate. I thought you
They
said the
can't
mate
find him.
stuck around.
The second mate, the one who was in the jolly boat with the captain.
I misunderstood. Okay,
The
so
first
the
mate,
who ordered all this.
yeah, the first
he's
mate who was in
long
charge of
gone.
the longboat, he's gone. They can't find him. They can't find any
Interesting.
members of the crew except the captain, the second mate, and this one sailor named Holmes. Holmes
Okay.
is charged with manslaughter, right? He is
Okay.
brought to trial. He is charged with the manslaughter of Askin, the guy who waited until morning and threw him over to drown, right?
Right.
And at the trial, like, everybody really kind of gives glowing testimony of Holmes's character. Like they're talking about, he was a generous man. He was an obedient sailor. He was faithful to his duty. He was skilled at performing it. He was always kind and obliging to the passengers and to shipmates. Never said a bad word about anybody. He was probably the best sailor on the ship, according to the captain and the second mate. Even other passengers, like other surviving passengers, say that after the William Brown hit the iceberg, he was like heavily involved in trying to save the passengers. Like he ran around, he made sure they got on there. He tried to make sure that they stayed safe to the extent he could. All right?
Okay.
It's only this thing in the longboat. Like their Holmes is not painted as this vicious killer who doesn't care. He's painted as a conscientious crewman who fulfilled his duty and had to do this, right?
Okay.
They even say, passengers say that in the longboat, when the women were beginning to freeze, he stripped off all of his clothing except his undershirt and his pantaloons
Oh my
and
God.
gave it to them. And after Askin was thrown out, one of the passengers fearfully asked him, uh, "Yeah, are you all going to throw over anybody else?" And Holmes is like, "No one else will be thrown out of the ship. If any more are thrown out, or if any more are to be lost, we're all going to be lost." Now, of course, that was a fucking lie because the next morning they checked those two guys into the water, hours
Yeah.
away from being rescued. But we don't know if Holmes did that. Okay, we
Mm-hmm.
don't know if Holmes did that. We don't know if that happened. Uh, yeah, he's the one who actually saw the crescent and made it so they could see him and come and rescue them. So this goes out, and the trial is regarding manslaughter. He threw these people overboard, and really, it was a trial about the crew throwing people overboard. But like I said, Holmes was the only representative of the crew in the longboat that they could find, so he becomes the sacrificial lamb.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? He goes to trial. He's arrested. He goes to trial on the 13th of April, 1842, 6 days before the 1 year anniversary of all of this.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Okay.
The trial, the public is interested in it. People are testifying. The defense that Holmes raises is not "I didn't do it." What Holmes raises is it was necessary for us to throw those people overboard because if we had not thrown them overboard, the longboat would have sunk and we all would have been lost.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go through our factors. Okay, defense of necessity. It requires a real or a reasonable belief of a specific and immediate harm that will be incurred if you don't take the criminal act, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So does that fit? The longboat is going to sink, or they believe the longboat's
Yes.
going to sink. All
They
right.
believe the longboat is going to sink, and that's yes. So far, number one, I say yeah. They got that.
They don't have any other reasonable alternative.
Uh, unless there's stuff about shipbuilding that I'm not
Yep.
aware of. Agreed.
Everything indicates that the longboat was going to go down.
Okay.
So the harm to be avoided must be greater than the harm that is done.
Dying versus dying; those are obviously equal.
Is it though? Because think about it. It's 14 people versus the lives of like what's 14 minus 41? 27.
Okay. All right. So you're saying that what if it were 50-50 split, then it would have been okay, but
Maybe, maybe not. But the idea being you throw them overboard to save the lives of the rest.
right.
So, and remember, it's not the harm must be greater than
Okay.
or equal to the harm must be greater than. So if the harm's equal, they kind of cancel each other out, don't they?
Oh shit. Okay, I wasn't thinking like
Yep.
that. Okay. All right. So there's is that one of their defenses?
Yeah, well, yeah, the defense because the last factor is you can't have contributed or caused the harm that you're trying to escape, and Holmes didn't put the iceberg in front of the
Right.
William Brown, and he didn't poke holes and shit. So
Right.
obviously that applies. So he raises the defense of necessity.
Okay.
We had to throw those people overboard. It was necessary for us to throw those people overboard because if we had not, the longboat would have sank and there would have been a greater loss of life. That had to happen.
Okay.
Okay. And just to put it this way, the law of the sea. The law of the sea, once again, you do what's necessary to survive, to make sure that the most people survive, the good of everybody. And that's, you remember the captain, even like, yeah, I know you're probably going to have to do something like this, but don't do it until it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think happened?
Oh no. All right. Meta. I'm going to meta this whole thing and look at what you were pointing out. This time, instead of the pardon, he was found guilty
He was. He was.
because of immediate.
No, no, it was pretty immediate. That's
Uh, I thought that's what I thought that was the crux to it.
no.
Okay. Oh. All right. So he was found guilty. I'm going to say he was found guilty on 3 counts of manslaughter.
He was only charged with 1 count of manslaughter for asking. He wasn't charged with manslaughter for the rest of them, just for
All
asking.
right. He wasn't charged for the 2 guys in the
Nope.
morning.
He was just charged for asking.
All right. In that case, he was charged for asking because when he threw him over, Askin asked for a stay until morning, but the religious guy got it and Askin did not.
Nope.
Okay, now you got me. What do you got?
You are trying to negate the defense of necessity.
I am.
That's what you're getting at. But the Circuit Court of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania did not negate the defense of necessity.
What the hell did they do?
The Circuit Court opinion comes back and says absolutely necessity could apply here, but it doesn't. Why doesn't it?
Because he was ordered to?
You're on the right track, but you're not there. Who gives the orders?
The captain.
And what is what is the captain the captain of?
The captain of the ship.
And what does the ship carry?
Passengers and cargo.
And what does the crew do on the ship?
Make sure that the ship gets from point A to point B.
And how do they do that?
By manning the ship.
And keeping it what?
Clean and seaworthy.
Which would be?
In good repair.
Safe.
They didn't fix the fucking
Nope.
longboat.
Safe.
No?
Safe.
Safe.
A crew's duty is to the safety of their ship and
It's passengers and
it's
maybe
passengers.
Cargo. Oh
It's
my
passengers.
God.
The court said the defense of necessity would only apply if they had already fulfilled their duty to keep the passengers safe, because as crew members they had a separate duty owed to the passengers.
Holy shit. The court was saying they should have thrown themselves off first.
What the court said was there were 9 crewmen in that boat. You didn't need all 9 of them to operate that boat. The crewmen should have gone in first until there were only enough crew to safely man the longboat, and only then could you start throwing passengers overboard. And if you did, you had to do it by lots. You could make the group smaller, but you had to draw lots. And first you have to draw lots amongst yourself, and all of you have to sacrifice yourselves before you can turn to the passengers to throw them overboard, because you are the crew and you owe a separate duty to those passengers.
Fuck. Oh shit. Okay.
And okay. B, there's a part of it. You remember that I mentioned that cook who stepped in to make sure the passenger got the time to pray. Like when they're talking about the members, they're like, well, there were 9 crew members there, and some of them could have gone overboard, and one of them was the cook, and he was black. They don't use the word black. They don't say African American. This is 1840. They're polite, but it's not a polite term anymore. But they are very obviously pointing out his skin color. And when they're saying there were plenty of crewmen to sacrifice, including this guy. Like they make a special note. They don't need to make the special note of it. They do. So it's obvious what the court is saying is you should have thrown him in first.
God, fuck.
So yeah, Holmes is convicted. He's convicted of the manslaughter of Askin. What is his sentence?
Oh my God, if you say pardoned,
Nope, he was not pardoned.
I don't know European. I'm gonna assume execution
Fined $20 and released. Why?
because they still wanted to do the pardon, but that's the
The
smallest thing
law,
they could.
the law of the sea.
Oh
You
my
do what it takes to
God!
survive. They weren't condoning it. And had he not been a crew member throwing over passengers, very strong probability the court would have said it was necessity. You are protected by the defense of necessity. And don't forget, Holmes was the sacrificial defendant here.
Yeah,
He was on trial because they couldn't find the other people. So they
right.
convicted him to make that point. Hey, law of the sea or no, you still have to fulfill your duty to your passengers because that is also the law of the sea.
Okay,
Number
okay.
two, we're not going to send you to prison for the rest of your life or hang you because we're aware that you were just a seaman who was doing something that the first mate was ordering you to do. So here's a $20 fine, which I assume was pretty steep for 1842, and go on your fucking way.
Jesus.
So that would imply that the defense of necessity would apply in those situations, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to England.
Let's go.
Let's go to England. It is, and this is actually the case that I'm about to tell you about is one of the first cases that you read in law school in criminal law. All
Okay.
right, the Mignonette is a yacht. It's an English yacht. It's built in about 1867. It's what they call an inshore boat. It's really only meant to go around the coastline. It's not really meant to travel in the open sea. All right,
Okay.
it's built in England. It's sailed in England. But in 1883, an Australian lawyer named Jack Want decides he's going to buy it. He wants to buy it for his leisure cruises around the coasts of Alaska. All right. Uh, he decides that he's going to have it sailed to Sydney, Australia. Not Alaska, by the way, Australia. They're two completely different areas of the world. Uh,
I
he
was a little confused. Like, God, this guy gets around for the
so,
1800s.
so he decides he's going to hire a crew to sail it from Southampton, England, to Sydney, Australia. Right.
Okay.
He hires a crew out of Southampton, consisting of a gentleman named Tom Dudley as the captain, Edwin Stevens, Edmund Brooks, and a 17-year-old named Richard Parker, who is on one of his first voyages. He's very inexperienced. He's the cabin boy. All right.
Okay.
On the 19th of May, 1884, it sets sail. It is sailing from England to Australia.
Australia.
Now, if you wanted to sail from England to Australia, what do? Where do you go through? You go through the Suez
What?
Canal, that wonderful canal in Egypt or in the Middle East that cuts from the Mediterranean right into that area of the world, right into the Indian Ocean and the Pacific,
Okay.
right? Then, if you wanted to sail from Southampton, England to Sydney, Australia,
Are you going all the way south?
you had to round the Cape of Good Hope.
Oh my God. Okay. All
Okay.
right.
So it hits a gale, heads towards the Cape of Good Hope. Uh, the vessel's actually kind of doing okay. Dudley's like, "Hey, heave to," which is like, "Drop everything. We're gonna, take down the masts or the sails, so we don't go out of control. And we're gonna rest. We're gonna get a good night's sleep. All right, everybody's gonna sleep." He tells Parker, the cabin boy, "Hey, go down below, fix us all some tea." Right? Right as Parker goes below, a rogue wave hits the Mignonette,
Okay.
washes away the bulwark. The ship is going to sink.
Oof. Okay.
The Mignonette, though, has something the William Brown did not. It
Lifeboats?
had a single lifeboat.
Yay.
Keep in mind, the Mignonette, once again, was not built to travel on the open sea.
Right.
It was built and intended to be a leisure yacht sailing around the coasts of England.
Okay.
All right. So it doesn't have a bunch of seagoing stuff. It's got one lifeboat that's kind of flimsy. That they actually, when they're trying to get it away from the Mignonette, they actually knock a hole in it. Right. They grab a couple of navigational instruments. They get 2 tins of turnips. They don't manage to get any fresh water.
Oh God. Okay.
They're moving away. The Mignonette sinks. All right.
Okay.
Uh, so they're on now this lifeboat, 1,600 miles northwest of the Cape of Good Hope.
My God.
All right. Middle of nowhere. They are 700 miles away from the nearest land. Right? St. Helena is the nearest land. They're 700 miles away from it. The first night, Dudley improvises a sea anchor, which is a kind of a stability thing for ships. He improvises one to keep it going into the waves and keeping it stable so it doesn't like dump over. Uh, they also spend the first night fighting off sharks with their oars.
What the fuck?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
actually a thing?
that's actually a thing. Like there's sharks there. They the turnips like they open the first can 2 days later, and there's like 5 pieces of canned turnip that they share among each other. Right.
Oh my God.
A couple days after that, they see a sea turtle. They drag it on board and kill it. They get about 3 pounds of meat, plus the bones, plus the second tin of turnips. So from about the 9th to the 17th or so, they have food they can eat. But what don't they have?
You said they grabbed navigation equipment.
I said they grabbed 2 tins of turnips and navigation equipment, and what did they not grab any of?
What? Oh, water.
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 They had no fresh water. Now that's okay. That's fine because they caught that sea turtle. And believe it or not, if you drink fresh blood, all right, it will hydrate you. You can't drink it after, like you can't drain blood from a dead body and drink it. That will kill you. But if it's fresh blood, it collected from somebody who's still living, you can actually drink it and it will serve to hydrate you. So they got this sea turtle. They bleed the sea turtle. They're going to drink its blood, except a wave comes over the lifeboat and seawater gets in the turtle blood.
God. Oh my God.
So they have no fresh water. They can't catch any rainwater. By like the 13th of July, they're drinking their own urine.
Oh my
All
God.
right. Parker. Yeah, you ever heard the water, water everywhere, and not a drop to
Not
drink?
a drop to
The
drink.
rhyme of the
Yeah.
ancient mariner, right?
Yeah.
So around the 20th of July, they've been at sea about 15 days. Parker, the cabin boy, sees water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink, and he starts drinking seawater.
Said for him.
So he gets sick. He's ill. He is probably dying because they're all basically dying. Uh,
Yeah.
about the 16th or 17th, they start talking about we should draw lots. We should draw lots to choose who's going to
God.
die. And then, having done that, the rest of us can survive. They argue about this for 4 or 5 days. Uh, so Parker is part of this, but at some point, Parker's going to fall into a coma. Like he's very weak. He's falling into a coma. And the captain says, we've got to kill somebody so that the rest of us can live. We have to draw lots. Uh, Edmund Brooks is like, no, I'm not doing that. Stevens, the first mate, and Dudley both look at Parker and they're like, well, the kid's dying anyways, and we've got families. So the next day, Dudley and Stevens kill Parker.
Okay.
All right. They kill him, they drink his blood.
Holy fuck.
Stevens is standing there. Dudley is there. Stevens holds down the legs of Parker. Dudley slices slices Parker's jugular vein. They collect the blood. They go through. Brooks doesn't have any part of it. There is an account told that as they were killing him, Parker awakened from his coma and said, "What me?" before they cut his throat.
What, me?
What me?
What the fuck?
They eat Parker's body. Stevens apparently has like some regret. He doesn't eat a lot of it. Dudley and Brooks, who didn't want to kill Parker, but like apparently now that it's done, it's fucking chow time. Apparently eat most of it. Then they catch some rainwater. Uh, yeah, Dudley would later say, "I assure you, I will never forget the sight of my two unfortunate companions over that ghastly meal. We all was like mad wolves who should get the most, and for men, fathers of children, to commit such a deed, we could not have our right reason."
Holy fuck.
29th of June, like 4 or 5 days after they kill Parker, drink his blood, and eat him. They see a sail, and they are picked up by a German sailing bark and taken back to Falmouth, England.
Holy shit. Okay.
Okay, they arrive there. Brooks, in the grand tradition of we have killed a bunch of people, uh, Brooks disappears.
There you
Brooks
go.
Brooks fucking gone. He's gone.
There you go.
He's
Goodbye.
nowhere to be found. Dudley and Stevens, though, the captain and first mate, they go to the customs house, and under what was called the Merchant Shippings Act, in effect, they give statements. They tell everybody, this is what happened. All right, now, yeah, at some point Brooks is back, like, okay, but there's a police sergeant there at the customs house,
Okay.
and he hears them talking about this. All right, and the police sergeant goes to Dudley, the captain, and is like, "Hey, how'd you kill that kid?" And he's like, "With this knife." And the cop's like, "Oh, let me see that. I'll give it back to you, right?" Uh, Afterwards, the customs house contacts the Board of Trade in London, which handles all the merchant ships and everything, and
Okay.
maritime law applying to it. Uh, the Dudley and Stevens are getting ready to go back to their family. That is when the Register of General Shipping and the Board of Trade, Register of General Shipping says, "Hey, arrest them." The Board of
Okay.
Trade says, "Don't do anything yet." And instead says, we're going to talk to the Home Office. The Home Office is like their Department of State. All right.
Okay.
Uh, the Home Office is closed for the weekend. Can't give it. The police sergeant goes out, gets warrants for murder from the mayor of Falmouth, and arrests them.
Okay.
Okay. Finds Brooks as well. Arrests all three of them.
Okay.
They're taken to court. They are all just like convinced that all this is going to be dismissed, right? The magistrates, like the lowest level there, instead reach out to the solicitor that handles all of the murder cases and says, what should I do here? Because these guys, they were at sea, they killed this kid, but it's obviously a case of necessity. They had to live.
Right.
The solicitor says, don't do anything. like, don't do shit. We're going to ask for advice on this.
Yeah.
A lawyer shows up for the three of them. He asks the magistrates to give bail. The magistrates say absolutely not, because we're pretty sure you're going to run. On Wednesday the next week, the Home Secretary of England talks to the Attorney General of England and the Solicitor of England about these three guys who just showed up in Falmouth and said, "Hey, we killed a 17-year-old cabin boy and ate him." Right?
God. Okay.
And they say, "What should we do about it?" Right? The Attorney General is a guy named Henry James. The Solicitor General is Farrell Herschel. The Home Secretary is Sir William Harcourt. Right?
Okay.
Harcourt decides we're going to prosecute them.
Okay.
Okay. And why does Harcourt say we're going to prosecute them?
All right. Is it no drawing of straws?
No.
Is it because they chose the person and that person happened to be the 17-year-old fucking kid that had the least amount of experience?
Nope. It's a lot
I,
simpler than that.
I got nothing. What?
Because for over 100 years, England had wrestled with what to do about the defense of necessity when it comes to murder and cannibalism on the high seas. And they had not, despite at least four separate attempts since 1839, they had not been able to reach any consensus
Oh dear
over
God.
how to handle it.
So they've just decided this is the case. We're
So,
figuring this out.
so they have decided this is the case. And it does not help that about 10 years earlier, something very similar to this happened with another ship called the Zexine and its second mate, James Archer, who was in lifeboats with seven other survivors, and then five people were picked up out of the lifeboats. And he's like, yeah, no, we drew lots and butchered a guy. Right? So they actually reported to the General Council in Singapore, which was a British protectorate or something, by the way. And the Attorney General of Singapore writes to the Board of Trade and says no further action is necessary. But then the governor of Singapore orders that they be arrested, and that the Home Office had insisted that there be a trial. Uh, but the whole thing falls apart because they can't decide what the appropriate jurisdiction is. They can't
Oh
decide
my
whether the
God.
appropriate jurisdiction is Singapore, where this happened, the waters of
Right.
Singapore, or England, where the ship was flagged.
Oh my God. Okay. Right. So this is before they came up with the where it's flagged rule.
Right. No, no, this
Okay.
was while it was that. It was still there. But they couldn't figure
Oh,
out
okay.
because the crime happened. Like if an English flagged vessel commits a crime in United States waters,
Then
you
it's a
can
United
it's a
States
United
crime.
States thing. You're in the waters of the United States.
Okay. Which
So,
is what, 50 miles offshore, right?
like 50 to 100 a lot of times, yeah.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
there's a whole thing about what you can claim as recognized territorial waters.
Oh my God.
So they decide they're going to prosecute it.
Okay.
Okay. Um, so they make a bench appearance, which is kind of like an arraignment that Friday. Uh, the three men are basically granted bail. The case is adjourned until the 18th of September, and the guys get to go home. But yeah, they got to come back for the defense, right?
Okay.
But here's the thing:
None of
where
them come back?
no, where they left from and where they put in at Falmouth and their the original port. I already forgot the name.
Okay.
Those are sailing towns. Those are towns with a large amount of sailors and a huge maritime tradition.
Oh no.
And it's a town filled with people who professionally and in their lives grew up with and respect the law of
Okay.
the sea.
Oh
You
no.
do what you have to do to survive.
Okay.
And Richard Parker wasn't the first sailor in his family. He was a 17-year-old cowboy. I keep saying cowboy, cabin boy. It was his first trip, but he wasn't the only sailor in his family. His brother Daniel Parker was also a sailor of much more experience. And Daniel Parker was in Falmouth, while the men who killed and ate his brother were being brought up for their arraignment and were then being released. And what
Okay.
does Daniel Parker do when he sees the three men who killed his baby brother and ate his body at sea?
And you said he's an experienced lifetime sailor?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So this is one of the darkest episodes we've done so far, so I'm going with the dark answer. Shakes their hand and tells them necessity dictated.
Oh my God. He not only shakes their hands,
You son of a
he shakes their hands in the courtroom.
What the fuck? Oh, oh shit!
So Harcourt, the Home Secretary, who's like, we are going to settle this question of necessity once and for all for murder at sea, he is just disgusted. This whole thing disgusts the shit out of him because the public now has started saying, well, they did what they had to do.
Yep.
Like the brother of the murdered boy's family is like, no, fair play. Yeah, we get it. We had to.
Holy shit, man.
So Harcourt's absolutely disgusted, right?
Right.
He appoints a barrister named Dankworts to try the case.
Okay.
Dankworts looks at all the evidence and the public sentiment and is like, yeah, we're never getting a conviction. Like
Yeah.
we're never getting a conviction. Plus, these guys have a right to silence, uh, and we can only admit a confession against the person making it. Uh, and the depositions that they gave probably not going to be enough to convict, right?
My God.
So it goes in front of the magistrates September 18th. Dankworts gets up and says, I have no evidence to offer against Brooks. Why? Brooks didn't give a deposition when he landed. Remember, Dudley and
He
Stevens.
left.
Dudley and Stevens are the ones who went to give statements. Brooks didn't.
Oh my God.
So he's dismissed specifically so they can call him as a witness. All right.
Oh. Oh shit. Okay. Okay.
So Dackworts opens this case as calling people who had heard the guys talk about it, calling Brooks. At which point the magistrates said, "Okay, there's enough to bind you over for trial on this. So we're going to bind you over to sit in front of the Assizes Court in Exeter, which is a higher court. Okay,
Okay.
it's a more important court. All
Okay.
right. Thus begins the first trial on this. And I haven't said the name of this case yet because we haven't gotten to the point where it has a name yet, really.
God. Okay.
Uh, the first trial, Dudley and Stevens are being tried together. All right. And actually, I'll tell you the name. It's called Regina v. Dudley and Stevens. Regina being, like, how we say the state versus
Yeah.
or the United States. Regina is the Latin word for queen.
Okay. Okay.
This was while Queen Victoria was queen, so it is the Queen versus Dudley and Stevens. All right.
Okay.
Trial opens November the 3rd, and they have actually appointed for the prosecution a Arthur Charles. All right. For the defense, representing Dudley and Stevens, is Arthur Collins. So Arthur and Arthur. All right.
Okay.
And Arthur Collins is actually being paid out of a defense fund raised by the public. Like the public's paying his stuff.
Okay.
All right. Uh, the judge who is initially assigned to the case is Sir William Robert Grove. All right. William Robert Grove is a safe judge. He's down the line by the book. All right. And everyone is aware that this jury very heavily sympathizes with Dudley and Stevens, that they're aware of the failed prosecution in the Singapore case. They know about the law of the sea. But remember, Harcourt wants a conviction. So all of a sudden, Sir William Robert Grove is no longer the judge. The judge becomes Baron Huddleston. And Baron's not his name. His name was Sir John Walter Huddleston. He was a baron. That's how I have to put it, right?
Okay.
Former an Irishman, former lawyer, judge on the Queen's bench, and he is. You know how I said at the opening that sometimes it's obvious judges have made up their mind; they're not supposed to say it, though.
Yes.
All right, let me describe Huddleston to you.
Okay.
Huddleston was famed for wearing gloves during his trials. Okay?
Why?
Because he color coded the gloves to the offense he was going to make sure people were convicted of. They say he wore green for burglary and red for like adultery and breach of promise, and black for murder.
Did
So
he wear black to this
he wore
trial?
black to this trial,
Oh my
right?
God. All right.
So a jury is impaneled. They get it. The jury is pretty much the same jury that had sentenced a man to death the day before. All right. Dudley and Stevens say not guilty. Charles outlines the arguments and immediately says, the defense of necessity shouldn't apply. The insanity defense shouldn't apply. They both knew what they were doing. Uh, but he doesn't like hide how bad things were on the boat. Like he's like, these guys would have died like 2-3 days later had they not done this. They would have died before being rescued. Uh, but really, what he says is the rule of law demands that you convict them and let the queen give them clemency if she wants. Maybe that's the way we should do it, right?
Okay.
All right. So Collins gets up. Collins getting ready to make his case. He's the defense attorney, right?
Right.
Collins is getting ready to make his case, and that is when Baron Huddleston, as the judge, says,
No.
"No,
No.
you're not going to make a case. I don't want to hear anything from you."
That seems illegal.
Huddleston had determined that he was going to ask or direct the jury to do something called a special verdict. A
What is
special
that?
a special verdict was the jury goes out and says these are the facts. We're finding the facts, right? But we're not going to apply the law to the facts. We're not going to say guilty or innocent. We're just going to say these are all the facts we agree on. Then they say the judge can determine whether or not the facts amount to guilt. Now, this existed in the English law at that time, the special verdict.
Oh my God.
And they had been really, really common over 100 years before that. But
Oh, but this is already gone for a while.
no jury since 1785 had ever returned a special verdict where they just say, these are the facts, judge, you figure out what they're guilty of. Or if they're guilty of
Oh,
anything.
this is right out of a TV show. Oh, the Forgotten Law. Yes, use that one.
So that's the whole thing. And like he's like telling the jury, hey, you can do this. And by the way, I expect you to do this. Return a special verdict finding just the facts and let me determine guilt or innocence.
Oh my God.
All right. Uh, Huddleston has also decided that he's not going to decide whether or not the facts support guilt. Instead, he wants a bench of authority, which is a group of judges. All
I was
right.
waiting for you to say he was going to draw lots. I
You,
was waiting for it.
all right. You know how I was talking about precedent in the past and how a single judge's opinion is never precedential.
Right.
This is where it comes from. A bench of authority was a panel of judges deciding the law.
Okay.
And therefore, a decision from a bench of authority was precedential.
Okay. Oh, so
Okay?
they were making sure that whatever verdict
Yeah.
was here would be the new law.
So
Okay.
he's
All right.
saying,
So he's doing this on purpose.
yeah,
He's playing
yeah, like
chess.
he's like, I want you to give the facts. I'm not going to decide if they're guilty. I'm going to convene a panel of judges to decide, they're guilty, so that's the law from now on, right? The idea being that Collins then gets to argue the law of that panel of judges. And essentially, yeah, like the jury when they come back, they return a verdict of the facts, a special verdict that's like, yes, they killed him. Yes, they probably would have died had they not done it. All right. So it's not too bad on that. Uh, but there's one other thing that has to happen.
What's that?
Okay. They have to establish that English law applies, that the Merchant Shipping Act applies. The Mignonette, right, is a pleasure yacht. She wasn't made for international travel. So is she bound by the Merchant Shipping Act? Is she a flagged British vessel bound by that act? So the prosecutor goes in and produces some accounts and depositions and evidence that the Mignonette was registered in Britain for jurisdiction. So the jurisdiction should apply. They actually at one point say it was a British merchant vessel because that's how it was. That's how it was registered. That's how you get the law to apply, right?
Okay.
Collins gets up, and Collins just basically gets to give a closing argument. He gives a closing argument on necessity. Uh, the judge then looks at the jury and he's like, "Hey, here's your choice. You can either find them guilty of murder, or you can return a special verdict and let me decide whether they were guilty of murder with a bunch of other judges." Right? So,
What the fuck?
so the jury, which always, by the way, because like what Huddleston's not telling them is they have the absolute right to return a general verdict, to say, or to return the verdict of not guilty. They can do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what fucking Huddleston tells them,
Yeah.
right? So the jury's kind of waffling on this. They're like, well, law of the sea, necessity. They would have died. And Collins is very persuasive on this point, right?
Right.
Huddleston doesn't want to take the risk. Huddleston reaches into his fucking robes and whips out the verdict that he had written the night before. And then he starts reading it off, paragraph by paragraph, to the jury and says, hey, either you agree with me, or if you remain silent, I'm going to take it as agreement.
What? What the fuck?
Right?
That
Right? Now,
I thought they were like the creators of law. The fact that a judge can just do this doesn't seem like we're using the best system anymore.
so So he reads this off, and like I said, this special verdict actually does contain. It's like, they would have died within 4 days. Parker probably would have died before the survivors died. Uh, you know, Parker being killed and eaten was necessary for the survival of the other three. Like, he includes those facts in his special verdict, right? The jury's like, hey, we've got some other facts that we would like to find. Like, we want to add some facts into this. And I was like, no, 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 it's cool. Like, don't worry, it's part of what I said. It wasn't. The facts absolutely were not part of what he wrote down. But he's like, no,
Yeah.
no, it's cool. It's cool. You don't need to do it, right? Uh, the final words of the verdict read, whether upon the whole matter the prisoners were and are guilty of murder, the jury are ignorant and refer it to the court. Which point Huddleston says, hey, you got bail. He adjourns it and then basically says, okay, we're going to impanel a bench of authority, right? After the trial, what has to happen is Huddleston has to copy the verdict and has to send it to London for review so a bench of authority can be seated, right?
Okay.
So he's copying down the verdict. The one he read off in court, the one that the jury agreed to or that he forced the jury to agree to, right?
Right.
And as he's writing it down, he realizes he fucked up.
What'd he do?
He called the Mignonette a yacht. In the verdict he read to the jury, he called the Mignonette a yacht, and he called the lifeboat an open boat, and did not call it the lifeboat of the Mignonette. Why is that important?
Because if it's a yacht, it doesn't fall under the law. It had to be
Exactly.
a shipping
It had
vessel.
to be an English merchant vessel, and the lifeboat not being a lifeboat.
I'm going to assume that means it's no longer a part of the ship. That
And
one's a
therefore
bit
does
weirder.
not. No, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
If it wasn't a lifeboat from the Mignonette, what happened on it doesn't fall under the Merchant Acts.
Oh my God.
So what does he do?
He just changes it
He
and
just
sends over
fucking
the.
changes it.
He just
Just fucking
fucking
changes
changes
it
it.
in the copy he sends. Right?
Unfucking believable.
So they impanel a bench of authority. Uh, First in London, the Attorney General actually appears to prosecute this.
Okay.
And immediately, the Attorney General says, yeah, here's the problem. The divisional authority of the Queen's Bench, which is the bench of authority they have, we only can decide a matter of law with a panel after it's referred from an inferior court only by statute and after a conviction. And there had not been a conviction. They
Oh
weren't
my God.
convicted. There was no decision of conviction made. The facts were just found. There was no conviction.
So they couldn't even do the panel.
Well, they couldn't do it in London. James actually suggests that they send the case back to Cornwall and Devon Assizes to add further judges to the bench because all high court judges, all the guys on the Queen's bench, had the authority to hear Assizes cases. Huddleston is like, I'm not sure you can add judges once a trial started. Plus, what he really wanted wasn't like more trial judges. What he really wanted was the higher court to say he did everything he did was okay.
Right.
Right? So while all this is going on, Collins is looking at the record from the trial. Right? And part of that record that he's looking at is the order, the verdict that had been sent to London by Huddleston.
And he notices the difference between yacht and okay.
Something sounds wrong. He asks for the shorthand notes from the hearing. He looks at the shorthand notes on the hearing. He realizes that Huddleston has altered the verdict.
Okay.
Right? So while all this is going on, eventually, what ends up happening? We're in the wrong court. There's been no conviction, so this court can't hear it. That court can't hear it. Can we
It's
add
got to
people?
get thrown
There's
out,
all this.
right?
Absolutely not. What happens is the attorney general basically says, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't do that larger thing. Let's just have it here in London in front of the Queen's Bench Divisional Court. And by the way, instead of 2 or 3 judges like we normally have, we're going to have 5 high judges on it. By the way, there's absolutely no authority for this.
So he's just making
They're
shit
just
up.
making shit up.
Okay.
They're like, they really want to settle this issue. So Collins is looking
Seeing
at
as the other guy just had a verdict written in his robes, this sounds about par for the course for this story.
So Collins, the defense attorney, is looking at this, and he could say, "Hey, we can challenge the jurisdiction, or we can challenge the Constitution, the makeup of the court, because you have too many judges, or we can challenge this verdict that he's altered, right?"
Yeah.
He doesn't do any of that.
Bad lawyer?
No idea.
Oh.
There's some speculation about it. There's some speculation that maybe the prosecution had actually promised his clients that they'd be pardoned, that they would be granted clemency after this.
Okay. All right.
Now we are in the case.
Oh my God.
The case is Regina v. Dudley Stevens, December 9th, 1884, from the Queen's Court Divisional Bench in London. All right. The presiding judge is Lord Chief Justice Coleridge. Actually, it's Lord Chief Justice Lord Coleridge, which is a fucking mouthful. I don't think you need 2 lords there, but okay.
I wouldn't assume so, but they like hearing their titles, Boozy.
Yeah.
They really like those.
They have now. There are 3 and remember, there are no facts in dispute. This is purely an argument of law.
Okay.
Okay. They got 3 fucking prosecutors.
Oh my God.
3 fucking prosecutors. All right. First, the Attorney General, James. Charles, who was the prosecutor at the trial, and Dankwitz, who was the prosecutor in front of the magistrates. All three of them were there. They read out the report of the trial. Collins then submits that the special verdict had been altered. Everybody agrees to it, and then they all just say, yeah, sure, it's fine. The jurisdiction's fine. Right? So,
Uh, okay.
so then Collins, so this is where he's kind of raising this shit now. Uh, then Collins is like, hey, this court's not competent to give a verdict because the extra jury hadn't given any verdict whatsoever. It just said that they would find whatever the court decided, right?
Okay.
The judges are like, oh, hey, that's kind of troubling, because you can't really do that. Yeah, and appeal it to us. We can't overturn a verdict that's never been entered.
Right.
Uh, then they say, however, we're going to keep going. All right. So
Making it up.
the argument that is put before the court by the prosecution is necessity is not a defense to murder. Now, remember, there's that St. Christopher case where the guys were basically pardoned by the judge because necessity was a defense to murder in that situation where they had to kill and eat people, right?
Okay.
We talked about that way back.
Right.
But the court says, we're not going to look at that. That's not precedential. And do you know why?
Because it wasn't in front of this court of 3 judges?
Because it wasn't filed in a law reporter. Remember how I keep telling you about law reporters and how for something to be precedential, it has to be reported, and anything that's not reported is a non-presidential decision that can only be used for persuasiveness? That's exactly what fucking happened because the St. Christopher opinion was never reported. It was never published as a reported opinion of the court. It could not be precedent.
Oh my god. Okay.
This is how the common law works. And we still have it in the U.S. It's fucked up.
It's pretty fucked up, man.
So Collins gets up and he's about to make his argument, at which point Lord Coleridge, is like, hey, by the way, you only get to talk about murder. We don't want to hear about the defense of necessity.
But that's the defense to the murder.
Collins comes back and he says, hey, there's this one case that actually says the necessity defense to murder it can work in this situation. And really, there's moral and theoretical and ethical arguments in favor of a necessity defense for murder in certain limited situations. What case did Collins cite?
Oh my, is it Holmes?
United States v. Holmes, 1842.
I'm glad they did the 1842 one. I've heard it's very hard to figure out which case that is.
So, after the arguments, the judges step back and say, yeah, they come back after like a few moments, right? And what do they say?
Guilty, now we have precedence.
No, they say we are of the opinion the conviction should be affirmed, but we're going to tell you our reasons for them, 2 weeks from now. You're guilty, but we're not going to explain why for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So Dudley and Stevens are sent to prison. December 9th, the judges reconvene, and what the judges say, what they come back and say, is there is no defense of necessity to a charge of murder. There is no legal precedent for it, and there is no ethical or moral precedent or justification for it. Essentially, what the court says, and this is quoting, to preserve one's life is generally speaking a duty. But it may be the plainest and highest duty to sacrifice it. War is full of instances in which it is a man's duty not to live, but to die. The duty in case of shipwreck, of a captain to his crew, of the crew to the passengers, of soldiers to women and children, as in the noble case of the Birkenhead, I'll explain that in a moment, these duties impose upon men the moral necessity not of the preservation but of the sacrifice of their lives for others, from which in no country, least of all it is hoped in England, will men ever shrink, as indeed they have not shrunk.
What the fuck? So they're saying that if we had to eat someone, it should have been the captain.
They're saying that you cannot commit murder to save your own life. Not self defense. Self defense is different. That's why I said it's a difference there. But you cannot commit murder to save your own life. They had no moral or legal grounds to take away one person's life simply to preserve their own when that other person had done nothing to put their life at risk.
God.
As,
So, really quick, just as a side, so does that mean had you drawn straws and everyone agreed that this is
nope,
a necessity?
absolutely not,
No, that
because
does not count.
that does not count. It does not really matter, and the reason it does not matter is because no life is worth more than another. That's what the court essentially says. Now,
That's incredible.
what's the difference between that and self-defense?
Well, self-defense, I'm assuming that you are trying to take out the threat to you in the present.
Exactly. Exactly. Necessity and self-defense are different. Self-defense is a form of necessity, but in self-defense, what you are doing is you're not really committing a crime. You are defending yourself from having a crime committed against you, from
Right.
suffering a greater harm, and you're only harming the source of that threat. Necessity is, we have to commit this crime to avoid a harm greater than that crime. And what the court said in Regina v. Dudley Stevens was there is no greater harm. Your harm is not less than that harm. Your harm is you lose your life, but the harm you are doing is taking someone else's life. And their
Holy
life is
shit.
not worth less than yours.
That's amazing.
And indeed, when you are faced with the situation, that's all that fancy talk is when you are faced with a situation where the choice is between your life and someone else's, you would have almost a duty to sacrifice your life rather than take someone else's in that situation.
Holy fuck.
Uh, now, you heard me mention the Birkenhead.
Yeah.
The Birkenhead's actually interesting fact. The Birkenhead was a case where a ship went down with a bunch of soldiers on board,
Okay.
and it only had a very limited number of boats to get people off. So what the soldiers did was they all stood on the ship and went down with it, so that the lifeboats could be used for the women and the children.
Jesus fuck.
And that is actually one of the first instances, and maybe the origin of the tradition of women and children
And then
first.
children, really, is the Birkenstock.
Birkenhead. The
Birkenhead.
Birkenstock.
What's
The
a
Birkenstock's a
Birkenstock?
sandal.
Oh yeah, there we go.
So Dudley and Stevens are convicted of murder. And what is their punishment?
If you say 20 fucking dollars,
Nope.
I'm gonna say they were pardoned.
They were sentenced to death.
Get on the first one, you tricked me.
Dudley and Stevens are sentenced to death, which is actually really weird. First of all, they thought they were going to be released. Like
Yeah,
they fully expected like the $20 and 6 months in jail type of
yeah.
thing. They thought that even after conviction they'd be released. So they are sentenced to death, right? Uh, yeah. September comes and goes. October comes and goes. November comes and goes. They're still in prison. They're still sentenced to death. And now the public is against them because now they've been convicted. Everybody's had time to think about it. They're like, yeah, no, that's right. Why were their lives worth more than the 17-year-olds? Law of the sea my ass, right?
Holy shit.
So the public's moving against them. And the queen can only exercise her royal prerogative of mercy, of clemency, of a pardon there,
Yeah.
on the advice of the Home Secretary. The Home Secretary, William Harcourt, the guy who rigged the trial.
Holy shit.
Now, there's a few things in their favor here. Okay. First, Harcourt is actually against the death penalty. He does not believe in the death penalty.
Okay.
Um, he fears, like he's not against commuting their sentence, letting the Queen commute their sentence, but he fears that anything less than commuting it to life imprisonment would create a mockery of the law because they had been convicted of murder, which is a reasonable fear because look at what had happened in the past. You know, Holmes was part of chucking 14 passengers overboard and got fined $20 and sentenced to like 6 months in jail that he'd already served waiting for the trial.
Holy shit.
You know, the
Okay.
other guys were pardoned. Other people weren't prosecuted at all. So he's got like a good thread here. We've got to make an example of it. So he does. He's like, hey, they have to have a life sentence, right?
Okay.
Either that or we have to have a justification for them not to have a life sentence. Right?
Okay.
Because remember, Harcourt wanted the conviction, but Harcourt wanted the conviction to settle this question of a defense of necessity when it comes to murder.
So in his mind, the ends
It's
were
yeah,
justifying the means. He
it,
needed this trial to
yeah,
work to establish law.
but now it's done, and he doesn't really want to see Dudley and Stevens killed. But now he's going,
Right.
but we can't just let them go. Otherwise, we've established a law and then said it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right.
So Harcourt does probably the only good thing he has done.
Took off the gloves.
He looks at what Huddleston did, and he realizes that Huddleston and the Queen's Bench never gave the jury the option of finding them guilty of manslaughter.
Holy shit! Does he call his own mistrial?
And then he says, uh, had manslaughter been presented to the jury, that probably would have been what they decided. And no judge would have given them more than 3 months imprisonment for a conviction of manslaughter on these facts. The Solicitor General and the Attorney General both agree. On December 12th of that year, Harcourt says, "How about how long?"
3 months?
Nope.
What?
6 months imprisonment and $20.
Holy shit!
Okay, not the $20, but
Holy
but
shit!
six months imprisonment. The exact
Holy
same term of imprisonment from Holmes.
shit!
They're told on December 13th, Dudley and Stevens are told, you're only going to serve 6 months. They're actually, you would think, very relieved, right?
Yeah.
No, they're pissed as hell. They're mad. They're
Because they
mad.
knew they were patsies.
First, they're angry that they're going, like they're relieved we're not going to be killed. Like they're like, we're fine with that. We're happy to not die. But first of all, we don't really think we should be in jail for 6 months. So we're a little pissed about that. Dudley goes to his grave insisting he never should have been convicted and he was railroaded.
I mean, he kind of
Yeah.
was.
So May the 20th, 1885, Dudley and Stevens have finished their 6 months. They are released.
Okay.
All right, and that is the case that they teach now in every law school because that decision that the defense of necessity never applies to murder actually filtered into the U.S. law too. It became one of the few criminal cases taught all over England and became a standard legal case taught to every American law student. It's read pretty much as one of the first cases in American law schools. I read it. We had this wonderful discussion with it when we did it. Uh, but the judges basically came in. That became the law in the United States too. So that impacted it. Necessity is no longer a defense to murder and can never be that. They
That's
determined that,
incredible.
right?
That
Uh,
is incredible.
there is a memorial stone to Parker in Southampton. that's basically got his name on it and says, he died this day. He was a cabin boy. His epitaph reads has two
If
Bible
you say
verses on it.
good, I'm gonna die.
Though he slay me, yet I will trust in him from Job. And Lord, lay not this sin to their charge from Acts. Both kind of like, hey, no hard feelings verses. It
Holy
definitely doesn't
shit.
say he was murdered by his crewmates in a lifeboat and eaten. However, the impact of this really kind of outside of lawyers like fades away. It doesn't become anything for general discussion, right?
Okay.
It goes out of the public viewpoint. By like 1901, everybody's forgotten about it. Uh,
Okay.
in the latter half of the 20th century, though, there is a group of performers that remember this case. And they remember Dudley and Stevens. They remember the Mignonette. And they actually uh, devise a skit surrounding five sailors in a lifeboat after a shipwreck, and they're arguing about cannibalism, right?
Okay.
And the punchline, as they're deciding, oh, eat my leg, oh, no, you can eat my arm, as they're deciding that, they call a waitress over and give her orders, and she comes up, takes orders with veggies. It's hilarious, right?
Okay.
Um, and that skit is known as the Still No Sign of Land or the Lifeboat Skit from Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Are you fucking with
I
me?
am not.
Are you fucking with me? The lifeboat skit.
Was inspired by Dudley and Stevens.
Holy shit, man! Oh. I've literally watched all of Monty Python's Flying Circus front to back when it was being shown on Channel 11 in Chicago during a pledge drive. I have watched every single episode. Fucking lifeboat skit is based off of law.
It's based off of the case of Regina v. Dudley and Stevens, and that, my friend, is the case of Dudley and Stevens here on Boozy's Legal Funhouse in an episode I like to call Filet Mignonette.
Well played. Well played. Good title.
Oh,
Oh, what? Okay, again, I'm sorry for being here this week. I was so enthralled by your story, all jokes went out the window. There was nothing I needed to add to that insane tale. Well done, dude.
and this is, by the way, just to point out, this is now the longest episode of the Legal Funhouse we have ever done.
Of course.
And it has been, we have been on the air for 2.5 hours. This is now
Oh my God.
like anybody listening to we may have to divide this one up. Anybody listening to this later is going to be just amazed at it. Oh,
Wow, man. That's one hell of a case. That is one hell of a case.
so
Shit.
if you enjoyed this, please come back. We will do this regularly, as all of our listeners know. Uh, our next live recording, I believe, will be at Anthro, Ohio on Memorial Day weekend in Columbus, Ohio. We'll be doing a case then that I'm trying to locate one that involves both Ohio and the paranormal, since that is the theme of the event this year.
Nice.
After this one, we are going to have Alkali over on his channel doing your D&D tonight.
Tonight is full audience participation D&D. I'm the DM, you guys are all the players.
And for the people listening at home after our recording, when can they normally see that and how?
For right now, it is going to be Mondays and Thursdays. You can find me over on twitch.tv/Alkali Anonymous. All one word. And after these next few weeks, basically leading up to Anthro, Ohio, the schedule will change after that. So it'll be posted on my channel, though.
And folks, that will do it for this episode of Boozy's Legal Funhouse. Remember, if you enjoyed the show, go to your podcast provider of choice and give us 5 stars. I don't give a shit what you say after that point. It doesn't matter. We just need it for the rating. And if you really want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/lawyersandliquor and slide a tip into the bank account. Or do none of that. Don't worry about it. Until next time, I am the Boozy Badger,
I'm Alkali.
and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Good night, everyone.
All right. We are.
No, I couldn't think of a single fucking joke, man. That
Yeah,
story was so good.
We're still
That
live.
story was so good.
We're still live because I want to tell everybody we're going to, if you hang out, we're going to raid you over to Alkali's channel once he gets his stream going. I assume here in a minute or so.
Yeah, I will probably be up and running in 5 minutes and then a 5-minute countdown. Could you hold everyone here for a bit?
I will kick everybody over on the 5-minute countdown because I got to eat dinner.
Absolutely, yeah. No, once the countdown starts, please pass. You're the best. Thank you for everything. Dude, can you spin a tail? That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Well done, man.
I mean, this is the longest episode we've ever had. So
we were having a good time.
yeah, we're gonna have to see how this one does once it goes on the podcast service because 2 hours and 20 minutes may be the limit for some people.
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of people listen to podcasts while driving and just continue when they get back into the car. That's how I did it.
So,
Wild Card 9, where Boozy is going to keep talking to you, and then they're going to pass you over to my channel, and we'll get started probably before 7:30.
Yeah,
at 7:30.
Once Alkali sends me the message, I'm looking at my Telegram. I will start the raid.
And chat, if you see me go live, tell Boozy as well, because I'm going to be doing a lot of prep over here. Boozy, I'm sorry. I'm going to jump right now and get that all set up. I'll talk to you soon. Be good, buddy.
You too.
Well done.
Bye. And if you bear with me, oh, look, it already did it for me. What do you know? It's probably going to terminate me here in a few minutes and tell me that I'm in the call alone and therefore it won't keep this open. I want to thank everybody for coming in and listening to tonight's episode of Boozy's Legal Funhouse. This is me and you. This part doesn't go on the audio recording. I'll cut it out later. I love doing this. I hate the fact we haven't been able to do it as much. Tonight's episode, normally the episodes are about an hour to an hour and a half. Tonight's episode went long, and it went long because we had a couple good cases, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get another one. So we're just going to call it a supersized episode when we put it on there. But thank you all for joining me on that. I greatly appreciate it. I've actually seen a couple comments that say this is my first Legal Funhouse, and I really like it. So, hey, that's always nice to hear. Tomorrow night I will be back as well. Not sure with what yet. It may be Red Dead. That's what we were kind of looking at doing, was Red Dead Redemption tomorrow night with people from the Discord server. If you really do like the stuff, you don't want to be a Patreon supporter and you're on the channel, you can always subscribe to the channel for we are Twitch affiliates, or go to streamlabs.com/boozybadger and slide a tip into the bank account. Just the tip. I don't want to get pregnant. The moment that Alkali tells me he's ready to go, we're going to transfer you all over. And definitely hang out for Alkali's D&D stream. It's a wonderful stream. They do a lot of stuff, and they're really excited about bringing everybody in for an audience participation type of deal. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things, just to be blunt. But yeah, I'm surprised there's not a recipe for ribs thrown in there or something. Well, you know, I could do it. I really could. As a matter of fact, maybe I'll put one up on the Patreon with the show notes. Just give you a recipe for ribs on that. Oh, so as soon as Alkali tells me he's live, we'll get you over there. Hey, I'm tired. I've been exhausted all week, and I'm glad tomorrow's the last day I work this week. I've got court on Monday. I've got court next Thursday, but things are slowed down slightly. It's nice. It's pleasant. Oh, it's amazing watching Alkali DM of chat. He has like 20 story threads going at once. He's a good DM. He's a really good DM. I liked watching Dragor pop in and say, I came in the middle of it and couldn't leave. That was fun. Liar Griffin, thank you very much. Like I said, the next one is going to be record it live in front of an audience at Anthro, Ohio, and then hopefully after July, when we do our live episode recording over at AnthroCon, we'll be able to get back to 2 episodes a month. Normally recorded every other week here on the Twitch channel. There goes my thing kicking me out because it's telling me that I've been in the chat alone for too long. So let's see if I can get my screen to go back up with this as I wait for that. Yeah. Oh, motherfucker. Start your stream so I can kick people over to you. It'd be nice. I promised Alkali I would keep you here for 5 to 10 minutes while he started his stream so we don't lose the rush of people going over there when these things start. So yeah. Yeah, Matt Beer Universe Boozy, did it reverse? Did it reverse me? Uh, I don't know. Holy. How nice of them to keep you from talking to yourself. Yeah, no. Trust me, I talk to myself regularly, and this one's no different. Oh, was that him? Was that him? It was not, motherfucker. Just hit send. I'm not like I'm doing 3 things right now. Anyway, yeah. We do plan, by the way. Like I'm planning right now, probably on doing Red Dead tomorrow night. That's always a fun time. We've got folks from the Discord. Nikolai's normally there. Some other people are normally there. It's a lot of fun as we run around the Old West and Red Dead Online. Uh, and yeah, kill people. There's no cannibalism in it though. There's cannibalism in a couple other games I play. My spouse played Sunless Skies on stream once and just cannibalized half their crew. It was interesting. Yeah. Oh, we need to bounty out. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We just got to wait for Alkali to tell me your best regular colored badger lawyer. Well, I think I'm the only regular colored badger lawyer. Um. Okay. Sooner or later, Alkali's got to tell me that his stuff's up and I can send you all over. I don't know when, but I'm certain it will happen. I'm certain at some point he will tell me, and I can send you all over. We're just waiting. Just fucking waiting. I'm going to bring up his Twitch on my phone to stare at. I'll use the pink. I didn't know there was a pink badger lawyer. I knew there was a pink accountant lawyer. All right. What's for dinner? I think we're doing chicken legs tonight. And we are going to raid over with Alkali right now. Enjoy Dungeons and Dragons. I'll be back at some point, probably around 6 or 7 tomorrow night. And hopefully be back a bit on Saturday as well. Until then, I'm Boozy. You're not. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope we'll see you next time. Good night, folks.